Good morning, good afternoon, and good day wherever you may be joining us from. Welcome to another edition of the Digital Download, the longest running weekly business talk show on LinkedIn Live, now globally syndicated on TuneIn Radio through the IBGR radio network, the world's #1 business, talk, news, and strategy radio network. Today, we're learning why continuous evolution is the key to business survival. We have a special guest, Sid Mohasseb, to help us with the discussion. Entrepreneur, philosopher, author, and adjunct professor at USC's Marshall School of Business, Sid's unique ability to combine philosophical depth with practical business advice offers a refreshing approach to leadership. But before we bring Sid on, let's go around and introduce everyone. And while we're doing that, why don't you in the audience reach out to a friend, ping them, have them join us. We strive to make the digital download an interactive experience, and audience participation is highly encouraged. Right. So with that, Tim, would you kick us off, please?
Yes, welcome everybody. My name is Tim Hughes. I'm the CEO and co-founder of DLA Ignite, and I'm famous for writing the book, Social Selling: Techniques to Influence Buyers and Change Makers.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Good morning, Adam. Welcome.
Good morning, Rob. Good morning, everybody. And hello, I'm co-founder of DLA Ignite and his business partner. And every time you introduce this show and you say we are the longest running weekly business talk show on LinkedIn Live, I feel a sudden surge of pride. It's fantastic because we've been doing this for 3 years or something, haven't we?
3 years.
More than that, approaching 4.
Wow.
Excellent. Well, welcome and glad to have you here again. Bertrand, good morning and welcome.
Hey, hi everybody. I'm the newbie on that team, to be honest.
Yes.
Bonjour.
Sitting in France, I am the founder of Odysseus & Co., a very proud DLA partner. Sorry, and I'm quite happy to be sitting here with you on Friday.
Well, we love having you here, Bertrand, so thank you. And myself, I'm Rob Durant. I am the founder of Flywheel Results. I help startups scale, and I too am a proud DLA Ignite partner. All right, as I said, on the digital download this week, we'll speak with Sid Mohasseb. Sid brings decades of experience in helping leaders navigate uncertainty and avoid the pitfalls of static thinking. His insights push business leaders to break away from conventional wisdom and embrace disruption as a path to growth. Let's bring him on. Sid, good morning and welcome.
Hello, Sid.
Good morning. Good
Sid.
morning. I felt kind of left out not being a DLA partner.
We can work on that
Never
too.
too late. It's never too late.
Sid,
Good
let's
morning,
start by
gentlemen.
having you tell us a little bit about you, your background, and what led you to where you are today.
The last part may be a little hard to explain. I guess life did. But I
Right.
can tell you a little bit. I can tell you a little bit about and I'll give you the 25 cents version of it.
Invoice me.
I'm an immigrant. I came to United States in 1976 and went to school here and started a career. Actually started a company while I was in college and then exited and started a career in the consulting business, management consulting business. Became a partner, very large clients such as Federal Reserve Bank, Motorola, IBM, and sort. Started my own firm focusing on turnarounds and buying companies and leverage buyouts. Towards the end of my tenure at the consulting firm, I had a lot of clients in Wall Street, and they were making a lot more money than we were, and I was going in to clean up companies and do do the turnaround, and I said, wait a minute, why am I on this side? I should be on the other side. So it started that in the 90s, started 4 companies, did 2 turnarounds, purchased companies and turned them around. And then in the 2000s, I started a carve out piece of a business, offices globally in Europe and in Asia. That was a huge success. We were able to increase revenues by about 30-fold in close to a couple of years. Exited that, became an angel investor. I was the president of Tech Coast Angels, which is the largest angel investment entity in the US. Made a lot of early stage investments. Started a fund, a venture fund, and then jumped into one of our portfolio companies in 2010 to drive it to exit. Sold that company, which was a analytics company, to KPMG, and spent a little bit of time at KPMG as the national lead for strategic innovation. And along the way, I've been teaching at various places. I teach at USC, as you mentioned, both in the engineering school and in the Marshall Business School. I've got a couple of books. I'm kind of old enough that I have become brave to write a lot of articles and put myself on the line. As you mentioned, a lot of people know me as the entrepreneur investor. I don't recall who first called me that, but it kind of stuck. Because I believe that that things happen first in your mind, and the philosophy that you have as a personal, authentic person, an entrepreneur, and that's how I see the world through that lens.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for that. Sid, I want to start with a foundational question. Now, businesses, just in the course of doing business, always face challenges. How do you know when it's time to evolve your business strategy versus just push through?
You seem to be frozen.
Okay, I can hear you now. My question was, how do you know when it's time to evolve your business strategy versus just push through? Keep doing what you're doing.
So the question of evolve has to be explored a little further, or the term evolve. So my question would be, when do you know you shouldn't? Not because things around you are always changing. The customers are changing, the organization is changing, your value proposition is changing, the people inside the organization is changing, the technology you could use is changing. So you have to always evolve. Now, the question becomes, well, are we randomly changing strategies every day? No, that's not the case. I use the analogy of a caterpillar turning to a butterfly all the time. A caterpillar goes through multiple stages, 4 or 5 stages in normal. There are some caterpillars in the Amazon area that period takes 14 years. But it is a constant, it's a constant change. Adapting to the environment, adapting to the needs, and so forth. So evolve doesn't mean radical change. Yes, eventually you will become a butterfly, but that is not like a switch that you turn around and say, oh, this morning let's get evolved. It's an ongoing process, and it has to do with how you see the world. Whenever you say, I am good enough, whenever you feel that okay, I've got it, I'm making $1 million a minute or a day, or that's exactly the time that you have to think about evolving. The fact of the matter is, it's not you that drives success, it's them. And I can explain that. There are 5 pillars to any organization, gentlemen. There is the customer, there is the employees, investors, partners you deal with, and eventually the society. These 5 pillars drive a business. Every business, doesn't matter if you have a donut shop or if you're IBM and Microsoft or Tencent in China. It's the same 5 pillars. On the other side of these 5 pillars are people. Let's start with customers. We have an illusion that we make money. We have a sales force. The fact of the matter is the decision of giving us money is somebody else's. The buyer makes that decision. We have no decision in that. We have the illusion as companies that we have the decision. We don't have the decision. We have great salespeople. We present our stuff, but at the end of the day, the one who hands $1 or $1 million to us is the buyer. They make that decision. They make that decision based on a series of reasons that they have, and those reasons are constantly evolving and changing. Why? Because the same 24 to 25 to 34-year-old customers that we think we've been serving for 5 years, and they're not the same people. They have different needs. The market has changed. So it is the understanding of that reason and the exchange that we can create as a company that makes a decision to do a transaction with us. The same thing is with employees. We are generally under the illusion that we hire people and we give them a job. The fact is, in their mind, they accept a job, and they accept it based on their own terms, not our terms. They didn't sign up to be creative at 3 o'clock in the morning. They decided that this money is going to give me a benefit because my son is not feeling well, or I need to pay for the rent, or and that's what they decide to engage you with. Their reasons. The people now that are getting employed are very different than 5 years ago. Their demands, their expectations of salary, their expectations of working from home, it's all different. So they make the decision of being productive or not being productive. The definition of productivity is as we measure it, that's true, but they define it. The same thing with investors, the same thing with partners who engage with us, and of course, the same thing with the society that we operate in. So here's the deal. When do we evolve? When they evolve. Because they're really they are profit and revenue, in my opinion, is an outcome. It is generated as a result of a series of decisions that's based on how we deliver value and the exchange that we have with our constituents or stakeholders. Those 5 pillars.
So I absolutely get that, what you said. That makes perfect sense. So we've all, to some extent, been under the illusion that we're in control. You know, I'm creating the product, I'm selling the product, you're the buyer, and now I've acknowledged that, in fact, the other people other than me are the ones that are actually driving the business and the business success. So given that I've always been wrong about my role in this, how does that shift how I need to envisage development of the business? Because it's entirely different now, isn't it?
An absolutely wonderful question. Absolutely wonderful question. So if and what do they say when you're an alcoholic? The first thing to do is to say, "Hey, I'm an alcoholic." You just said, "Yeah, I was wrong," and that's okay. Being wrong is not bad. That's how we evolve, by realizing, okay, this doesn't work or that. So what does that do essentially to the role of the leader? Because that then trickles down to how we operate on the front line. The role of the leader then switches to being a conductor, to being a harmonizer, because there's a give and take. I can satisfy my employees 100% and not satisfy my customers and their reasons, or my investors. I can give a lot of money, a lot of benefits to my employees. I can cut my costs and control my margins with the customers and create the best, most exciting quality of product. But then there's nothing for my investor. I can truly do wonderful things if I cut corners with respect to environment and the things that I do, I haven't satisfied the reasons of my society, but I've created a lot of money. So there is a give and take. So when we say give and take, that requires an act of harmonizing. And it's not balancing. These are not equal parts at all time. This is like a symphony. So another thing that I always say, it's not a matter of work-life balance. It's a whole life balance for us as a company, as individuals. Life is not, and business and entrepreneurship is not that we have these five things like in music. We don't say, okay, the drum plays exactly 7.5 minutes, and then the guitar comes in and plays 7.5 minutes, and no, it's this blend that makes the symphony makes it harmonized. So the role of of a leader becomes a harmonizer that's constantly realizing what is changing and constant. It's always in flux. It's not a one time I optimize this formula. And if that's pushed down, that method of leadership, then it becomes a different structure. Now let's see what this does. If I'm saying that, for example, let's take these notions that would change. We say, and this is pretty prevalent in the HR business and so forth, and say people have to belong to us. No, we have to belong to them. This notion that people have to belong to us puts us at the center, the controller, meaning we empower people. The fact is, they have the power. They have the power of creativity, they have the power of productivity, they have the power of execution. They have the power. We don't have the power to give them the power. We just have to facilitate them to create and apply that power to the collective advantage of the company. So, in this case, if you look at it this way, culture is not imposed. We don't sit in a room and say, oh, we have a culture of productivity, we have a culture of this or culture is created because we're satisfying similar reasons for people of similar minds, and they bring their reasons to the table, and then the symphony begins.
See, do you think that shift explains the rise in introverts being great leaders, emerging leaders? I mean, compared to what we had in the past, really tough guys, basically shaping a vision and then pushing that vision into the organization with a lot of strength.
Well, I have a belief that what made us in the U.S. and also I think in other industrial worlds and where capitalism, if you would, prevails. What has made us was an unwritten, unadmitted understanding of what I just explained. Except over the years, um, we have focused on creating metrics, particularly at Wall Street, that are outcome based. A lot of folks at Wall Street, they make a lot of money. Who am I to judge? But these analysts sit in a room and say inventory turnover is high. Man, have you ever managed inventory? No, except on a piece of paper. That operational mind, that understanding of how things really click and work, has been turned into a series of very rigid KPIs. Now, I'm for KPI. Now remember, I teach one of the courses I teach is analytics. I am an absolute believer in using data to strategize, to optimize, and to create value. But there is a qualitative and a soft side of things. Now, I don't think it's a matter of being introvert or extrovert. I think introverts have been successful in the past and extroverts have been successful in the past. I think uh, the key is perhaps maybe I haven't done the research to see if there's any correlations, but maybe the introverts are less about themselves and their ego and more about building things, and maybe that's why it works.
Okay, thanks for that.
Sid, I love your philosophy around the five pillars. It speaks to me and what I believe. But it seems to fly in the face of the prevailing concept of capitalism. The prevailing concept of capitalism was brought to us by Milton Friedman. And his goal of the organization is one goal: simply maximize investor value. And that's how we've been operating for a long time now. Are we at the precipice of evolving that, or just you and I on the sidelines sitting there being wrong?
No, I think so. There's let's talk about capitalism. So first of all, I don't disagree with him. That's one man's opinion, but it is a pretty good opinion. The question is, how do you maximize profit? See, it's the matter of approach of how we get there. It's you and I want to go on vacation. You want to walk 1,000,000 miles to get from Los Angeles to to New York to have a good time? No, I'll say there's a better way of doing it. It's more efficient. Everybody is on board, and we'll having drinks and margaritas along the way. The question is not if we want to maximize profit, but the maximization doesn't start with profit. You have to maximize what you deliver and how you satisfy the reasons. If you maximize and harmonize, because you can't maximize one of these pillars, you mess up the other one. I mean, there are a million examples of it. Let's take everybody's darling now, Mr. Elon Musk. Okay, so he did a great job at SpaceX because those people, as employees, focus on employees. Those people love to go to Mars. They have a mission, but the folks at Twitter didn't have the same mission. You apply the value exchange was different. You can't just take those people had a different reason to be there and to do what they did. SpaceX folks didn't. He had lots of people that loved his car. But at in a matter of a couple of weeks, he cut the price by 10-15%. I don't exactly know the number, because the Chinese are doing it and I have too much inventory. He ignored the fact that some people had bought a car last week and they haven't even received their car, made them upset, broke that exchange relationship, and wanted to give himself a $56 billion bonus. That, my friends, is not harmonizing. It may be optimizing his shareholder, but it will have consequences, and it does. I mean, if he's lost 83% of revenue on Twitter, there's something there. If for 8 quarters in a row he has had excess capacity in Tesla, that says something.
So when it comes to harmonizing, Sid, because yeah, we talked about partners, customers, investors, the employees, the society, right? But these have different triggers, right, and potentially even different targets. So how do you make sure as a leader that so what's the recipe for aligning the target and creating that symphony you were talking about? Because in my experience, that's a very challenging thing to do.
That is, but the rewards would be the profits that Rob just talked about. The rewards would be worthwhile. I have a good friend of mine. He's not my client. I don't sit on his board, and we have wine every once in a while. And he became, when I talked to him, the first thing he said, "Sid, I'm going to do this with my company." And he now calls himself a platform, not a company. And he says, our mission is to do these 5 things. His profits have doubled in a matter of 6 to 8 months. Doubled. His clients say, we've never seen anybody look at and you genuinely are practicing. So it is complicated. It is hard. It is hard though, if if you play football and I'll take you out, you may be a great athlete. If I take you and for you in France, let's call it soccer. So if you're playing soccer and you're Ronaldo or you're Zidane, and I put you in a basketball game against the likes of LeBron James, you're not going to win because the rules are different. You may be a great athlete, so you have to change the way you look at this formula, and you look at this thing that this will change. Everything will change, and these people have, and they are people, and they are the ones who are generating revenue for me. It's not just the customer. Hey, people say customers are the king. Yeah, but no king can manage an empire without the rest of the people. It just it's not possible. So the idea of harmonizing in these five pillars means recognizing the reasons, and guess what? It's not perfect. It's not perfect, and there is give and take. And if you believe in this and you really approach it, then you don't measure the outcome. The fact that I made n number of dollars at the end of the quarter doesn't mean that my strategy was right. Doesn't mean that my it doesn't mean that it might have been that the guys, my competitor, lost their best salesman. It may be that it's not that they increased their price. I had nothing to do with it. They had a flaw in their manufacturing. They had delays. It's not necessarily an indication that my strategy worked. If we measured the outcome, measure from a strategy, measure, are you delivering the reasons for these people? And if you are, you're on the right track. So the measurement changes.
Okay, so we've all been viewing this from the wrong direction, and we acknowledge that we need to keep these five different pillars in balance. So hopefully people are watching the show and they're thinking to themselves, I need to go away and rethink how I'm doing business. So what's the starting point for people? What do they need to do first to start to get an idea and think about how they can do these things differently?
Again, an excellent question. So the starting point, first of all, some of your audience may say, "What is this guy smoking?" It's not possible. It is possible. It is possible. You will see a lot of, if you really look at various organizations, whoever you like, you will see traces of this. Maybe they practice in one area or another for a period of time. And I think, going back to Ralph's question, and I think this is the core of capitalism where we started. This is what we did. We built companies to deliver value. We didn't build companies originally to optimize profits. It just happened, and at the end we said, "Oh, but that's the core of capitalism." Capitalism is about creating value. It's not about maximizing profit. If you define value as profits, okay. Now there is a definition, and I'll get back to you, Adam, to your questions. I didn't forget, but there is a fundamental difference in how you view who is an entrepreneur. An entrepreneur, and this is the definition that happened in originally in France, who defined somebody named Jean-Paul Say, who defined the word entrepreneur. An entrepreneur is someone who has something, who wants to exchange it with something of higher value. Now, an Irishman added about 50 years later the element of risk, saying someone who has something who wants to exchange it with something of higher value, knowing that there is risk. Someone who has something. There is no indication of what that something is. It may be your time, it may be your product, it may be your idea. To exchange it with something of higher value. And nobody says what that higher value is. You decide as the entrepreneur what the higher value is. The definition you provided is the higher value as defined by as profit. That he sees that as higher value. Okay, a one-dimensional measurement. Now, If the higher value is defined as feeding the poor, then you become Mother Teresa, who is an entrepreneur who had something, who wanted to increase something, who wanted to exchange it with something of higher value. So going back to your question. So the thing is, this is not against capitalism. This is actually 100% capitalism. 100% capitalism. We do want outcomes, but we want sustainable outcomes. We want outcomes that are episodic, not episodic. If those, if you go to 1957, when S&P was created, and you look at now, over 85% of the companies that were the best and the brightest in 1957, that's about 60 some years ago, are not there anymore. What happened to these? Yeah, some of them got bought out, but they went away. And of the ones that are there, only 2% beat the S&P average. These were not dumb people. These were not bad companies. They were great companies at the time. We picked them as the S&P 500. So what happened? They eroded. They eroded because they were one-dimensionally, their value and mapping to what the reasons are did not match. Over time, they declined. So if you optimize against one profit dimension, you would begin to erode. Now, how do we do it? First, realize that we're all entrepreneurs, and the definition of what is success and what is satisfaction and what is the outcome is up to us. It's not up to the society, and it is not up to Sid or some other guy who defines what capitalism. You define what you are exchanging for what. So clarity of that is pretty critical in the success. uh, then it's the realization that really they are making me money, and they are giving me the boat that I sail on. They are giving me the house and it is because I have provided some exchange, and I have to figure out what that is. So if that realization is there, we're 90% of the way there. 90%, because then we begin to look at the world in an entirely different way. We don't look at this as, you have like ESG stuff and all that stuff that came in from the World Economic Forum. Oh, we have to give back to the society. We're not giving back. We're just realizing it's not that we owe them something. It's that they're part of the formula. They are a pillar. It's not this, oh, I have to put something to do A and B, and it's not an imposing element to our performance. It's part of our performance. So realizing that all these pieces are key. It's not that I'm giving an employee the power to do something. It's not that I'm giving him money out of my own pocket. No. Without their satisfying the reason, I will not be who I am. I will not have the business that we have. So I'm not doing any favors for anybody. They are doing the favor, and I'm harmonizing this. And as our French friend said, it's pretty tough to do this. How do you change? One step at a time. One step at a time. We are addicted to the sameness of how we've operated. Our MBA courses are defined based on outcomes. We have people like me who love KPIs. I'm on the board of a company, and this is fascinating. And when he talks with the CEO and the team sit in the room and they talk about KPIs, they're talking about targets. They're not talking about numbers that they are following to improve, enhance. They're saying, my target is to make X, the profit, the margin, whatever those numbers are. So there are things to race against, not the things to improve against. Not so the targets that we have to define has to shift. Meaning, as the margins are going to be created if my exchange of value is optimized. So let's go to the reasons first. So if we begin with understanding the customer, not because we send out in a survey and it says, do you like my product? Don't you like it? This is not a customer support 360 nonsensical, hey, here's the value. Let's see what it's really understanding why, who they are, and why are they here, and how are they changing. Call it psychology of people, call it whatever you want. There's people do what they do because of their own reasons, not because we want them to do those things.
Sid, thanks so much for this. Way back at the beginning, you described the 5 pillars as being the employees, the buyers, partners, society, and investors. Can you explain to me the part that society plays?
The which place?
Society.
Okay, so I think the partners are clear. These are maybe our supply chain guys. Here's the thing: they may do business with us because they like our logo on their site. Okay, if I'm Apple and I'm selling something to it's Apple is my client. Yeah, I like their name on my. That's a good that's a good name to have. So I may give them a better deal. I may compromise on price, or if I care about my cash flow, I care about the guy who pays me on time. I give him better quality. And so there's more than how much there is. Hey, you and I both went to school. We're both Christians. We're both Germans. We're both French. I have an affinity for you. We're both Democrats, Republicans. We hate this guy. We love that guy. So we both connect on a sport. So the partners relationship is based on more than price. It's the people connecting and those reasons that they would do business with us. If you look at the investors, people don't just invest because they want to make a return. If some people invest because they care, early stage companies, most of that VC money is because somebody sees a vision. Because my mother-in-law had cancer, I have an affinity to invest in companies that drive for solutions for cancer. And my expectation is always changing. 5 years ago, I was happy with 3% return. Now I'm not happy with 7. So you see how I'm changing? The same thing with the partners, the same thing with others. Now let's go to society. So we have to operate as a company. No company operates in a vacuum. We operate in an environment where where employees are provided to us, a crime free is provided to us, an environment to excel is provided to us, we pay taxes, that tax benefits are provided to us. We operate within an environment that if we violate certain rules, we would have a problem. If the society is not being taken care of or the reasons are not being met, we would have consequences that would impact our employees and our business. So there is an exchange there. It's not because we're just philanthropic people who go out there, and it's not a nonsensical thing that hey, I want to pay something to to get rid of the bums or the clochers or the the homeless. It's a matter of if you want to operate in a healthy environment, you have to consider that society is a component, a pillar of your of who you are.
Yeah, I remember when Lehman's went down in London, and it was the dry cleaners and the coffee shops and the and all of those things that were affected because people weren't going there and buying their coffee on the way to work and getting the dry cleaning done, etc.
The guys at Lehman had already taken their bonuses.
Absolutely, yeah.
As you talk about the 5 pillars and the harmony and the balance, I'm reminded of the fixed mindset versus the growth mindset.
Mhm.
And I think for those of us that only want to focus on that one pillar, again, I come back to the shareholder value and investors. That is sounds more like a fixed mindset, a fixed pie, if you will. Whereas that harmony seems to speak to growing the pie for all parties. Is that about right?
That's about right. That's about, I've never had it explained that way, but I love it. Yes, the absolute thing is some people negotiate, and this is one of those things about negotiation that, hey, if I've got, if you want 51% and I want 51%, even if we say, hey, let's split the difference, you didn't get what you wanted, I didn't get, so it's not a win-win, it's a lose-lose. This idea of, hey, you and I are negotiating, say, hey, let's split it in half our differences. You wanted 51%, I wanted 51%. So if we split it in half, you didn't get what you wanted, I didn't get what I wanted. It's lose-lose. to create a win-win, you have to increase the size of the pie. So I get what I wanted, and you get what you wanted, and the 51% is more than what it used to be. So you're absolutely right. If you optimize against one dimension, you may get that one dimension, but for how long? Questionable. Is that sustainable? Questionable. Now, the other thing is this. So if you go back to the Michael Porter and his approach of 20 some odd years ago, and then there are other people who have come up with the end of competitive advantage and so forth. The key is this idea that I have a 10-year strategy is no longer valid. It just doesn't work. I mean, the world is changing too fast. There's too much knowledge across the globe flowing through internet, and now with the AI and all that, there's too much speed in productivity gain. That the assumption that I sat in a filled room and maybe looked at some charts and graphs and decided the path for the next 10 years, and I'm not gonna be wishy-washy. We're sticking to it. That doesn't work. So if the longevity of a strategy is no longer 10 years, what is it? It's a shorter time frame. That means that we have to be able to always look at the parameters, look at the changes, and evolve in one direction or another direction. So when do we evolve? Going back to your first question, this minute. When do we stop? Never.
How do you foster adaptability within your organization if your team is resistant to change?
So let's talk about change. So there are a few factors. That's one of the things that I talk about a lot. I write a lot about. I've got TED Talks about it. So we have to look at change from two perspectives. First of all, imagine, gentlemen, and the audience that's sitting there for a minute. Imagine with me that if I don't know if it's 72 degrees outside, the birds are chirping. It's absolutely beautiful. Everything is just absolutely wonderful. You want to be a scientist, you are. You want to be Kim Kardashian, you are. You want to be the president, whoever you want to be, the ultimate thing, and you are. Imagine everything is absolutely perfect. Now imagine nothing changes. Absolutely nothing. You have a 5-year-old, you will never see your grandkids. That 5-year-old will forever stay at 5-year-old. You have McDonald's for lunch, you will always have McDonald's for lunch. There is no change, zero change. That's a horrible, horrible place because you have absolutely no options. You have zero options. The only friend that we have that provides us with options to progress, to grow, to change, to evolve is change. Without it, we are as stagnant as we can.
But that's simultaneously very heartening, but also very scary, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Particularly because you've swept away all the cornerstones of a belief system. This is how things are. This is how you need to. This is what you're trying to achieve. And all of a sudden, that's all gone now. And I think that a lot of people are looking out into the world, and they're finding it very difficult to chart a course. So 40 years ago, you would go and start work at IBM, and you would work there until you retired, and then you would leave. And you had a job for life, and there would be developments within that environment, but you would basically be doing the same thing unless you consciously made a decision to do something different. Now, whole industries are born and come up overnight and are swept away overnight. And the idea that you will go to university, you will learn to do something or a trade, you will learn to do it, and then you will do that until you retire, that just makes no sense in the modern world. So people are likely to be scared by the fact that many of these barriers have been removed. So how do people kind of, I guess, how do you meditate and think about your place in this new world where everything is different?
Yeah. So this is again, Adam. I think you and I could have a conversation for another 3 hours with the questions that you come up.
And we
You
will.
open up the bag of worms here, my friend. So here's the thing. The fact of the matter uh, is let's go from the change. So the change that we talked about, people change for two reasons. A, they believe in the severity of the problem or the opportunity. The severity of the problem or the opportunity. I'm working here, I change in one direction or another because I think if I stay here, I'm going to lose my job, I'm going to lose my life, this is going to be horrible. Or I think over there it's better than here. So I change. So there have to be a severity. It's not marginal, it's severe. And then the second is the direction of change, which goes with trust. I trust my leader and I will follow him in that direction because I trust that that's the right direction. I would trust him only if he has originally trusted me. Trust is a three-way thing. It's not a two-way thing. First, I have to trust myself as a leader. Second, I have to trust people. And then they will invest their trust in me. Only then. So change comes in that package. Now, going back to whether we want it or not, the AI environment is creating a $15 trillion. 15 trillion. And this is an estimate that was given by McKinsey 3-4 years ago. That number is bigger now. $15 trillion of economic impact every year, starting 2 or 3 years. Every year. Now, I want you to put that in context. 1.4 billion people work in China and they do 16 or 17 trillion. This is equivalent of a GDP of China. It's 3 times the GDP of India. It's 10 times the GDP of Canada. It is amazing. This power will not change. This will move where we're going to go. So either we're on board, we get on board, and getting on board means mentally we're on board, or we will suffer the consequences. Part of the reason that the IBMs of the world aren't there anymore and those environments aren't there is exactly because the companies were forced to focus only on profit. Why do we have the jobs go to China? The Chinese didn't come in and put a gun to our head in Detroit. That's ludicrous. We were optimizing profit, so get rid of these things. We were ignoring the environment. So now we have to suffer the consequences. Nobody came in with a gun. Nobody forced our jobs to go to China or any place else. Now, for that reason, we have come along this way. So what I'm suggesting is if we go back to how we built companies, how that IBM became the IBM that you wanted to stay with was because they satisfied the reasons that people had, because they were building something that made some sense, because they were not optimizing like Boeing their profits and make all this mess. So if we go back to the cores and evolve together and believe that there is more than what is on media, that the world is going to go to an end because AI is going to be the master and we the followers, I believe we can get where we want to get. But we have to believe that we have to believe that either the opportunity is severe and we have to trust that this is the right direction. That's the fact that they're scared, people are scared, is there. So the severity is there. Now they may not see the severity of the opportunity, but they certainly see the severity of the problem on the other end. But the trust isn't there.
But isn't part of the problem with this scenario that when IBM was founded, it was created with the dream that this would be around for 1,000 years, that people would build their lives, communities, families around my business. And the same with General Motors, and the same with Kodak, and the same with all of these massive conglomerates that were built. And yes, the company was built. We had in this country Port Sunlight, where there was a village built for the workers in the factory. And, because the rich mill owner decided that actually I need to give a better quality of life to the pit. So he got incredible loyalty from his workers. They worked really hard. They were really committed to the company. They had security and healthcare and all of those things. And this was 150, 200 years ago. Remarkable. But now companies are driven by profit and more importantly, by short-term profit. So I come in as an investor to your business and I say, if we lay off those 10,000 people and we move that development or that manufacturing to insert developing world nation here, China, India, Indonesia, wherever it may be, we move the work where I'm paying people not $500 a day each, I'm paying them $50 a day each. I've got a 10x increase in my profit on the manufacturing portion of my business. And for most investors and for most directors of businesses, that's a very beguiling thought. I'm compensated based on how much profit I can make for the business. All of a sudden, I now have the opportunity for me to do one of these things, which I'm sure all of us would agree is the wrong thing to do.
For who, Adam? The wrong thing. See, this is the thing. If we have made the leaders short-term thinkers, and they're in it for themselves, for them it's not the wrong thing to do. We are incentivizing them to do that.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. It's you and I would see that as being morally wrong. I'm going to lay off 10,000 people. I'm going to turn that lovely town into a ghost town because I'm the main employer in that town. And we've seen it in every country in the Western world happen this way. Those things have been outsourced to a cheaper manufacturing place. People have been laid off, and then all of a sudden the company falls from favor. People don't want to buy the products because of how they've behaved. But the chief executive, the managing director, the board, they don't care, because I've gone from earning $500,000 this year to earning $25 million next year, and then I'm on a beach. I've got my, it's like a scene from Trading Places. Tim's out on the yacht. How you doing, Tim? And we're having a great time because we've profiteered on the back of people's misery. Now, until we put in place a longer term thing, we'll continue to have Lehman Brothers type situations and companies going under, because I'm going to make a killing today, I'm going to retire tomorrow. It's not my problem. So how do we change this?
I mean, that's a great question. I mean, there are examples from here to Timbuktu about that. I think during COVID, Hertz, the car company, was filing bankruptcy. The day before the bankruptcy, the CEO got a $10 million bonus because he thought about going to bankrupt the company. What's the logic? Merrill Lynch was sold to Bank of America, and the guy who concocted this whole thing that they were going down got a $150 million bonus. How does that work? That just doesn't make any sense. But that's what we have now. I don't know. I'm not smart enough. I don't have enough influence to say, how do we get people to come out and put their personal interest aside and think of those 10,000 people and all those things. Now, before I can become a son, or any one of us can become a son, or even a central heating agency that warms up a 20-story or a 50-story building, I got to be able to warm up my own room. I would say, if we begin to think, each one of us, as the entrepreneur, whether our what we exchange our life and things with is A or B or C, as an entrepreneur, as a small company, if we begin to practice based on logic, I mean, what I'm saying is just simple common sense. I didn't come out from this, this is not the result of a 17,000 variable optimization. This is obvious. It's obvious. If we practice common sense and the obvious, practice it, then we will have the trust of the people. We will have companies that would stay a lot longer. And maybe if I warm up my room and you warm up your room, one day we'll have a city that is warmed up.
Wow.
Rob.
Sid, this has been great. Where can people learn more? How can they get in touch with you?
Obviously, my name, if they search Sid Mohasseb, they will find a lot of my books and my writings and stuff like that. My email is sid@mohasseb.com. It's pretty simple. And one thing that I'm contemplating, and if they want to send me an email, I am thinking, just to finish off based on what I just said, I am starting an academy that's called Anabasis. Anabasis means moving the base upward, which is a company I started, I don't know, 40 years ago. And the objective of this academy is to get as many people exposed to as many of these ideas as possible, to work on entrepreneurship and the mindset of people, because I do believe in capitalism. But what we have now is elitism. It's not capitalism. We have confused capitalism, because a group do this, and it's an upside down pyramid. I believe that there is tremendous amount of opportunity, and I believe it begins with people realizing in their mind that they have something and they can exchange it for something better, and they can make that decision of what that better is, not the society. And the drivers are not what success is defined by others, it's what the satisfaction that they define themselves. The trick is being able to define that satisfaction. The trick
There you
is,
go.
how do you have your authentic self, an authentic way of being a leader, and building trust in yourself and in others.
Excellent. Thank you.
Pleasure to
We
be
now
with you.
have a newsletter. Don't miss an episode. Get show highlights, beyond the show insights, and reminders of upcoming episodes. You can scan the QR code on screen or visit us at digitaldownload.live/newsletter. On behalf of the panelists, to our guest Sid, to our audience, thank you all for being an active part of today's digital download.